Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist of Care Ratings, joins us right now on the show. And Madan, I'm sure Maithili and you will have a discussion on the equities or rather on the currency as well. But just one quick word really on the data points that we are expecting today. Anything dramatic, or it'll pretty much be par for the course?
No, I don't think it will be dramatic. It will be very much on expected lines. So like if you're looking at industrial production, we've already seen that the core sector data does indicate that the kind of recovery we have seen in April and May will continue into June. So I think guided more by a very high base effect, which by a low base effect, I think we're going to get a much better number in terms of IIP growth. But though it's not going to be really broad-based. So I think it's a good news in the sense that we've had negative growth rates in manufacturing last year. So any kind of a positive number which comes and is, in case it's sustained, I think it's going to be good news for us. But the critical part will of course be from August onwards. I think that's typically the festival season followed by the harvest season, which would really determine whether things are sustainable or not. Now, as far as inflation, CPI inflation is concerned, we are still looking at the inflation number actually picking up. We're looking at a number of closer to 8%, around 7.8%. And this is primarily going to be driven by food prices, which we know very well have gone up in this particular month. And I think with uncertainty in the monsoon still very much on the cards, there could also be a further uptake in consumer prices as we go ahead, because as inflationary expectations get buffered in.
Dr. Sabnavis, if you're looking at a higher CPI closer to 8%, despite the base effect that we were going to see till November, then does that mean that RBI's target of 8% for January 2015, does it look as if even that might be in jeopardy? Forget the 2016, but even 2015 might get jeopardized.
No, I think that's the reason why the RBI has played cautious and not taken any action on the interest rate front, because I think they're aware of the fact that this particular CPI number which we're looking at is something which is going to be fairly volatile going ahead. And since we're not quite sure about how the monsoon is really going to behave, what's going to be the impact on Kharif crop, there could accordingly be this impact on food prices. So I think the number of 8%, I think it all depends upon how the Kharif crop behaves and whether it's going to be a normal crop or whether there are going to be certain disturbances in specific commodities. And so I think based on that only could we really take a call on whether the 8% number is attainable in the month of January. As of now, it does look like that even given the kind of monsoon conditions which have prevailed so far, the numbers would tend to be around 8% for most of the time. Yeah?
And if you were the RBI governor, would you have been heartened by the finance minister's statement when he was asked about interest rates? He very clearly said that's the RBI's domain and I'm going to interfere. Quite in contrast to his predecessor who always had a view, and the view was always that interest rates should be down. So would you be happier if you were the RBI governor with a finance minister like this? Does it make the RBI's task much easier or just a little bit easier?
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier because I think there was quite a bit of controversy in the past about whether the finance minister and the RBI are on the same page. But now that it's been said in the open that the RBI would finally be the ultimate authority to decide on interest rates based on its own perception, the way in which it looks at the economy is behaving, in particular inflation, it definitely makes things much easier because I think there's a lot of hype also which is created where there's a difference of opinion between the finance ministry and the Reserve Bank of India, which itself could be a bit unsettling for the market. But I think from the point of view of the markets, I think this is very positive news, and definitely from the point of view of the RBI, it makes taking decisions a bit easier once the finance ministry clearly demarcates who's in charge of what.
You know, it's not only on interest rate and inflation that the RBI and the government seem to be on the same page, but also on the matter of financial inclusion. There are reports that government is going to push ahead very aggressively with financial inclusion. In fact, the PM is expected to make a big announcement about opening bank accounts. Now, is that the right way? Are we using banks to achieve social objectives? And is that the right use of the banking sector?
No, I think this is a very tricky issue because there are arguments on both sides. Personally, I think banks are commercial enterprises which have to be run best. I mean, the running of the banks should be left to the bankers themselves. The moment we bring in financial inclusion, we should remember one thing, that priority sector lending does have a higher propensity to turn into NPAs. So, and especially when we're talking of a bad monsoon, there would definitely be a greater pressure on farmers to repay their loans. So at this particular point of time, pushing aggressively on inclusive banking, especially on the lending side to my mind could be a bit challenging as far as banks are concerned. But in terms of opening of more branches and making banking more accessible to the people in remote areas, well, it's a very laudable attempt, but again, I'm not quite sure how it affects banks' balance sheets, because the fact that in the past we have seen that banks have been trying to close down unviable branches, and today if you're going to tell them that you'll have to open branches in places which don't have branches, which would probably have already been evaluated earlier, there would definitely be some kind of pressure on banks as to how do they maintain operational efficiency while delivering good returns to the shareholders finally.
And how do you view reports that the CBI is now investing loans given by IDBI Bank to Kingfisher Airlines? Is this likely to impinge on banks' risk-taking appetite? Would they be very wary, because anytime you learn a decision can go right or wrong, and unless there is evidence, concrete evidence to show that the decision was based on malified intent, would it be right to go after banks for decisions that go wrong?
No, I think the issue should be seen more in terms of growing NPAs. I think there's definitely concern that NPAs have been growing, and I think what we are really looking at is how do we really control the growth of NPAs. So what we are seeing today is that if you're able to identify the NPA cases and see as to why is it that they become NPAs, I think that would be the right way to go about it. Now, these are very specific cases, specific to certain banks, specific companies, and I don't think we would be in a position to comment, considering that we really don't know what really happened. But I think we can look at it more from the point of view, of the macro point of view, about how these NPAs have been building up, and the banks have been taking corrective action. So I think that's the right way to look at it. I think NPA is a major problem. We've seen these numbers increasing, especially if we include the amount of restructured debts. The ratio could be something like over 10%. That's what the Financial Stability Report of the RBI shows. And they've also pointed out the sectors which are the vulnerable sectors. So evidently banks need to exercise more caution and probably hone up their own processes when they're going in for such kind of lending.